This rapid and continuing build-up of military force are General Colin Powell, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and General Norman Schwarzkopf, Commanding General Central Command and now Commander U.S. Forces in the Gulf.
My guts told me the same thing ever since I've been here, and that's we got a big job to do, and every night when I go to bed at night, I think what I'm going to do the next morning when I get up, and every morning when I get up, I think what I'm going to do every hour after that. You know, where this is a big enterprise over here and a lot of responsibility, and I take it very, very seriously, and frankly, half the night I think about it too.
General Schwarzkopf's mission has two main objectives. First, to ensure that Saudi Arabia and the other Gulf states are secure from the threat of further Iraqi aggression. And second, to demonstrate that the member nations of the coalition are in deadly earnest in support of UN Resolution 660 to the effect that Iraq must withdraw from Kuwait unconditionally.
The United Nations moved swiftly and decisively, condemning Iraqi aggression, demanding an immediate and unconditional withdrawal of Iraqi forces from Kuwaiti soil. The 5 permanent members of the Security Council spoke with one voice, and at the request of Saudi Arabia, we, the United States, moved quickly to put into effect the defense plans we at Central Command had prepared to enable us to respond to just such a crisis. The British were right there with us, shoulder to shoulder. Like us, you had warships already there on station in the Gulf. You sent aircraft to help defend Saudi airspace, and when we wanted the support of your ground troops, they too were sent.
Early in October, the Royal Naval presence in the Gulf is augmented by the arrival of 3 Hunt-class mine countermeasure vessels, urgently required to combat the ever-present threat from Iraqi mines. This is a vital part of the protection provided by the Royal Navy to the steady flow of ships into and out of Al Jubail that are henceforth to constitute Britain's sea tail.
With 4 frigates, albeit with some more on the way, I was clearly hard pushed in terms of my own national forces to do this, and we looked after their safety through that transit of the Red Sea, really through distant support and through the cooperation with our allies. The Americans had major naval forces in the Red Sea itself. They were well aware through us of the daily movements of our shipping and kept a weather eye open for us. As they came into the Gulf, clearly we were able to do something more direct in their support, and indeed we provided both distant and close support to those ships as they came up. We had also been very conscious of the threat from mines once more to the approaches to Al Jubail, where they were going to offload, and we had arranged to mount a minesweeping operation to secure the approaches to Al Jubail, and this was completed just before the first ships arrived.
When we arrived in Jubail, clearly time was not on our side. We were under pressure to set up the logistic base quickly because the operational picture was fairly unclear, and we had a great deal of stock and equipment to receive, marry up and send out into the desert. The port operators were busy unloading ships. 10 Regiment RCT were moving stocks away from the docks and putting them into the force maintenance area, supply areas, some of which were 20 kilometres out into the desert. 33 Field Hospital was setting up our field hospital in the Jubail area, and indeed 24 Field Ambulance, my own field ambulance in the force maintenance area, was providing medical cover for the thousands of soldiers who were waiting to deploy out into the desert at this stage.
On arrival in Al Jubail, I found myself with a lot of eager soldiers, nowhere to live and operate from, and initially no equipment to carry out any tasks. The biggest problem for us on arrival in Al Jubail was to assess the many tasks we'd been given, allocate manpower and indeed vehicles as they began to arrive across the jetty. I had been sent there initially to receive my vehicles and then assist with the outload of ships coming into the port. but I was also given the responsibility of running reception, the reception of 7th Brigade group through the port of Al-Jubail. To my surprise, also, we were given the responsibility to run the 2,000-man tented camp, which eventually became affectionately known as Baldrick Lines. That in itself was a massive task. The tented camp wasn't completed by the time we got there. There was no infrastructure, no facilities, and therefore I had to detach a large element of the regiment, the quartermaster's department essentially, to running the tented camp and setting it up for 2,000 men. All the while, of course, equipment was arriving on the jetty. 7th Brigade were arriving day and night into the sheds, and we had all that to cope with. As my vehicles arrived, we organised them into sections, troops and squadrons, and began the task of moving equipment away from the dockside.
There's a feeling of excitement buzzing around, which I'm sure you can feel. The boys in the sheds woke up this morning with a purpose, going to get the kit unloaded, and really looking forward to getting out into the desert and working alongside the American Marines. It's very exciting.
We took over a dockside warehouse, which was just a huge building about the size of a football field, and we set up in there to carry out a modification program on the Challenger tanks. We were also doing some modification work on the Warriors, but we did those outside on the quayside itself. There was a problem with the air filtration system of the Challenger tanks, which was known about in Germany, but because the conditions were such, it wasn't dusty and sandy, except in salting, we could get away with it, and there was no urgency for the modifications to be fitted. In the desert, sand would become a real problem, and therefore it was vital that that modification was fitted. We were under great pressure. We had to do a squadron a day. Initially, each tank took us 18 hours, and therefore to produce 16 or 17 tanks, which we were doing, we were under great time pressure. We started at 7 in the morning, and the first day we'd actually finished about 3 in the morning, ready for the next lot to come in at 7 that same morning.
The setting up of the Jabeur range, where we had chosen to do our fire manoeuvre, to make certain, first of all, the guns were firing correctly, and then to do the absolutely essential training that was going to get us ready for war, was a very complicated business. I got heavily involved in this because when you're dealing with the Emir of Al-Jubail, for instance, it's really a commander who's got to go and see. So the first thing that was necessary was to get the Emir's permission to move Bedouin settlements from off the area that we've been given to do this manoeuvring in. And he was extremely cooperative. Then, with his staff, we sent our own staff out to ask the Bedouins to move, and then to move their camel herds off what was clearly
realism was actually very easy to achieve. And of course, we actually had the all-arms aspect ever present with us, rather than having to try and arrange it rather artificially in Germany.
Well, the Irish Hussars were in an interesting position because, having just returned from England in a split role in the UK, we had never been to the Great Batters. In fact, we had only done one short exercise as a regiment on Saltire, and we hadn't had infantry on that either. So in terms of training as a regiment or as a combined arms group, we had done very little. We had plenty of enthusiasm, I can tell you that, and of course our spell on the ranges immediately prior to going, was very successful.
We deployed into the desert, and our priority was to really finish off the individual training that had been conducted in BAOR. Our emphasis had been on individual training in Germany because it was felt that if we could perfect all those individual skills, such as tank gunnery, firing 94mm law, then we had some really good building blocks on which to work up the rest of the training. There were some things that we couldn't do, like firing 50 caliber machine guns, which we then possessed, but we didn't have the ammunition or the range space. But that was soon overcome when we got to Al Jubail and were able to train up with the US Marines.
The early days were very crucial to us in particular, having not done a lot before. And I issued a very short directive, which was that we had to learn to live and fight in the desert by the middle of November. We lived under a pretty strict routine, although we were a long way from the enemy at that stage. But it was important to start training for war right away, and it was no longer just training. We had to learn how to use and maintain our equipment very quickly. There'd been a lot of criticism about the equipment before we went. We wanted to prove them wrong. We had to learn how to maneuver in what was a much bigger space than we'd ever maneuvered in before. And we had to learn how to do it in combination with the infantry and with the artillery. And therefore, the first 3 weeks of training was crucial. It was very, very intense. A lot of it done at night because of the heat. But by the end of it, I reckoned that we could have gone to war.